It's the Awake Space Astrology Podcast. I'm Laurie Rivers, your host, here to bring some inspiration to get those aspirations out into the world. Can you believe we are at the end of July and heading into August? But don't worry, my dears. I got you. What an exciting time it has been. And did I not promise you that we would have an exciting 2024? Remember the rubber chicken video? Back in January, if you're new, and I know I have so many new followers on TikTok and listeners here on the podcast and patrons. Oh my God. If you don't like patron shout outs, speed past it. You have a fast forward button. But I like the patron shout outs because thank you for supporting this podcast. We are 100% listener supported. And that's not bad for a 55-year-old woman who produces her own stuff. We're still in the charts, folks. You guys have kept us in the charts. And not that I paid attention. We might have been in the charts before and I didn't know, but it just came to my attention. And we now have enough listens to be in the top 1% of podcasts globally. Now, there's a huge gap between the 1% of the 1% and where we're at. But my goodness, a lot of you are listening. Thousands of you are listening. And I'm honored. I'm not going to get choked up. I promise. I'm not going to cry. So what are we going to talk about in this episode? Well, we're going to talk about August. Yes, there is hope in the air, and we do have Mars approaching Jupiter, and these are in Gemini, and it's easy to be optimistic, and it's easy to take action on optimism. We don't want to be too cocky just yet, because that Mars-Jupiter conjunction is going to be making a square with Saturn. And so there's going to be some interesting happenings this month. So, remember, I give you the overview from the 2024 year ahead that all supporting patrons get in the Patreon shop. And if you have trouble accessing it, I know a couple people had trouble with it. You don't have to upgrade. It's $5 and up. Gets access to the 2024 year ahead that I recorded back in 2023. And it's a wild one. Okay, it's a wild one. So you can listen to that and stream that through my Patreon shop. And if you're a new patron, there's a lot of things you can listen to and watch in the Patreon. You want to go to the collections at the top of the page. If you don't want to be a patron, you can still go to the shop. And there are videos and ebooks and all sorts of stuff you can download depending on your interests. So what else are we going to talk about? Well, why don't we take a deep breath? Take a deep breath. So Harris will be the VP nominee at the DNC. The drama that I saw for the DNC is something I'll talk about probably next week. But it won't be a new candidate. She's the presumptive candidate. So that's taken care of. Trump, and I stand on this prediction, Trump will not be president again. Okay. So deep breaths. I've been saying that for how long? He will not be president. He won't lead the buffet line, folks. So there's that. August is a tumultuous month. It is. There's going to be a lot of stuff happening in the world, and I'll talk about that later in the podcast. So why don't you grab your matcha, your iced tea, or iced coffee? I know it's hot all over the place, and we've got storms brewing. We got them brewing in the Pacific. We got them brewing in the Atlantic. We got them brewing up in the north. It's stormy weather. So we'll talk about that and so much more later in the podcast. But we're also going to talk about the astrologers and psychics and mediums who are backtracking in their presidential predictions. In fact, I was interviewed by a major online publication on my opinions of the ethics of political predictions. So, and I'm going to talk about that and the excuses of the timeline change, because yours truly actually did have to study quantum mechanics theory. I know, when I tell you you've got nerd girl on your side, I ain't joking. People don't hire me because I'm pretty. They hire me because I'm good. So I'm laughing at some of the influencers in the astrologer camp. I don't think they're astrologers, to be honest. I don't think they know not that much about astrology. I can tell that they don't. And it's not jealousy, guys. We'll see who's right. I'm not worried about it. In fact, my boyfriend was questioning my prediction. I was like, dude, I'll bet you $1,000. And he was like, what? He knows I don't bet. And I'm like, serious, man, shake on it. He wouldn't do it. I was like, well, there you go. So I'm not saying to bet on this. Okay. That was not permission to speculate, but that's how sure I am in my prediction. So we can take some deep breaths and also know that there's shenanigans on the way. And I'll talk about that later in the podcast. We're going to talk about the timeline thing. We're going to talk about the Lion's Gate and why it's not an ancient thing. And then we could even culminate that with Christians being insulted by what happened at the Olympics, thinking that the painting of the Last Supper was insulted, which is ridiculous, first of all. What a ridiculous notion. So keep cutting education, folks. Keep cutting it. Keep cutting that budget. My God. We can be spiritual and engage our brains. In fact, it's important. It's called discernment. Okay. If you're religious, it's called critical thinking. If you don't run in religious circles. So we'll talk a little bit about that on the podcast. I'll answer some patron questions at the end as well. And we will have a lot of patron shout outs because 509 of you, as of my recording this, have joined the Patreon in the last 30 days. And in fact, really pretty much in the last 2 weeks. I am flabbergasted and floored. So if you're driving to work, get your hands on the wheel, pay attention, eyes up front. If you're driving the kids somewhere, I'll promise to watch my language. If you're just having a vacay, I'd love to know where we're on vacation or if we're taking a hot girl walk or working out together. I'd love to help you start your week. All right, let's get on with the show. Like, for real, all these astrologers and psychics and mediums are suddenly changing their predictions and jumping on the Vice President Harris bandwagon. And to my listeners, I apologize for mispronouncing Kamala Harris's name incorrectly half of my podcast. I corrected myself last week. If you want to have the full astrological meal of Vice President Harris's astrology, you can go to the Patreon. I did a 44-minute presentation where I walked you step by step through her natal chart, her transits, her progress chart, her solar returns, her lunar returns. And I'm going to say it, she's going to be president. Now, is it going to be litigious? Yeah. And so a lot of these so-called astrologers or psychics or mediums or whatever they're calling themselves are part of the alt-right pipeline, first of all. They fall into conspiracy theories. And they haven't really studied astrology. And it's not a new thing. It's been around as long as astrology's been around. There's arguments from, the Roman era. There's arguments from the, medieval era that we found in historical records where people debated the ethics of divination in public spaces. And there's always been grifters. So, and the problem is the average person doesn't know how astrology works or psychic or mediumship readings. And it looks like magic. Astrology is a field of study. Okay. Astrology is a field of study. It's like data science. And yes, there are some mystical elements to it and can be to it. But when it comes to mundane predictions, we stand on the shoulders of giants. There's hundreds, if not thousands of years of observation and correlation. There's very strict rules to how mundane astrology operates. And what we see out there is people who kind of mix and match modalities without very good practice behind them. We're using best practices, and that's why we see so much inaccurate astrology. And it gives people like Neil deGrasse Tyson the ability to criticize us. It sets us right up. I talked about that with Mark Jones a couple of weeks ago. Mark Jones, the astrologer from England. And they give these people the idea that we're charlatans, that we're guessing, that we're throwing darts at a wall, that, they don't represent astrology well, and there's not a lot we can do about it except show you the real deal. Okay? So when it comes to mundane astrology, there's not a lot of free will involved, and timelines don't shift. The astrology doesn't change. They just couldn't read the astrology. Okay? I've been saying that for a long time. In fact, there's a question I'm going to answer on here from several patrons who asked me, why are other astrologers saying Donald Trump will win? Or why were they, until about 2 days ago, when I'm not, when I have consistently for years said he won't lead the buffet line. He will never hold another position of leadership. And I'll say a couple of things. One, they weren't looking at his progress chart. Two, they were misunderstanding Jupiter's role in his 10th house. They were thinking it was giving him good luck. I don't think it's necessarily good luck. It has been and it hasn't been. Jupiter is a magnifying glass. It can magnify where he's been deceitful. It can magnify where he's put his life force because it's coming close to his sun. Okay. So there's a lot of things people have misread in those charts. And they also didn't look at his solar or lunar returns. They just did a very beginner level look at transits with a very basic understanding. And they didn't look at it with an expert eye. And there's nothing wrong with being a beginner if you admit it. But when you try to claim expertise, and there's quite a well-known influencer out there who claims to have taught themselves astrology from a toddler age. And I'm like, anybody who's actually studied astrology knows that's bullshit. So, especially as somebody who learned to read it too. I did. And I'm sorry, I wouldn't have had the capacity to understand many of the astrological concepts until I got older. So I read a lot of metaphysical literature as a child, and it gave me a wonderful foundation. But I didn't understand the depths of it until I became an adult. Because you have limited experience, and your brain is still forming and maturing as you grow as a child. Doesn't make you, if you're a child and you're listening to this, doesn't mean you don't study it, but just understand that experience is part of the understanding when it comes to astrology. So that's why we see different things. Okay. So they were kind of using the cliff notes of astrology to do predictions. And that's why I've sat there very confidently going, yeah, well, we'll see. When people are like, no, this astrologer said so and you're wrong. And I just sit there and I'm like, okay, I may look arrogant. No, it's confidence. It's not arrogance. I'm amused because it's like being taunted by a 5-year-old. Like, you're old and stinky. And it's like, okay. Oh my gosh. So yeah, that's really why, we see different things. It's because they don't know what they're looking at. They haven't done the study. And every 4 years, and this is something I talked about with the reporter, I was like, every 4 years, people come out of the woodwork and think they're political experts. They haven't got any political training. It's not just astrologers. Joe Blow in a hoodie. Katie Dew in her tiara. People think that opinions equal to facts, and they don't. And so as a political analyst, I bang my head against the wall every 4 years because everybody gets distracted by the presidential race. Not saying it's not important. If you're new here, it is important, but it shouldn't be your sole focus. In fact, if you want to make big change, you got to focus on the local level. That's exactly what the Koch brothers did. It took about 12 years. 12 years. Now, it was a 50-year plan. But the coup de grace really happened with Koch brothers injecting money. And they would fly people and relocate them to take things like county commissions. Okay. Because they'd stall other people's careers. So you want to look at your local stuff as much as you, and I'm not telling you how to vote. I'm just saying, if you want to make a difference, if you want to make a change, that's how you do it. You do it at the local level, the state level, and then, flip the house if that's where you want to go. So, and again, I'm not neutral politically. I'm left of center independent. I'm not a fan of either party. But I also know how the system works. And I'm going to tell you, you're not going to win the presidency with a third party. You're just not. You're not going to get the votes. You're not going to get the electoral college votes unless you change things in your state first. And then you could give a surprise. I know a lot of people are worried about the electoral college. I'm honestly not right now. I'm really not. I don't think the Democrats are unaware of the situation. I think we have enough history behind us, and I think there is a power transition in the party, and I think you're going to see that at the DNC. I think you're going to see a new generation kind of taking its place and the old guard moving into mentoring positions. And some of them are going to do it willingly, and some of them are going to be a little grumpy about it. Bernie. So, it's just what we're going to see. That Mars-Jupiter conjunction forming is something else. I'm kind of excited about it, personally. On a personal level, it's great for yours truly, because it's going to be right near my Venus. Not conjunct it completely. It will be by degree, but not an exact conjunction. But it's still pretty cool. I'll take it. Even with the square to Saturn. Squares are very creative on a personal level. So I'm looking forward to it. I think right now I'm looking at restructuring how I do things. Because so many new people have shown up, and I want to be able to serve as many people as I can through classes and applied astrology. Not just teaching how to read a chart. I think that's great if people want to learn it, but it's not for everybody. Not everybody's going to enjoy learning astrology. It's mind-bending, but I do love teaching people how to work with the astrology. I can work with the astrology of their own chart. And so I have multiple workshops on that, and I've taught them before. And, help people with their mindset, understanding how to work with their Mercuries. We already do that in the Mystery School. I'll have some new stuff up for the Mystery School in August. I took time off for me, partially for my birthday, and because I knew that full moon was going to be opposing my sun and my Mercury, and I was like, well, it can go a couple of ways, and it went really well. So now I'm not as scared about October. Woo! Oh, we'll talk about October later. We don't need to talk about October right now. I feel like Grover. There's a monster at the end of this book. Don't turn the page. These things can be interesting to live through. So, the other thing I want to talk to you about before I go into patron shoutouts is it's really important to understand when I'm giving mundane predictions, that's what I expect us to hear about in the headlines. They may or may not personally impact you. Okay. On a personal level, you can have a great month. You can have a great year. You can have a great day. It depends on your own natal astrology. It depends on your own mindset. Okay. So if you're always looking at the downside, life's going to be more of a downer. If you're looking at the bright side, life will be more tolerable. So I'm not saying put on rose-colored glasses. I'm just saying we're in an era of opportunity if you get creative and you get innovative and you get adaptive. But if you're trying to hold on to what was or the status quo, or you're living deeply in fear, it's going to be a harder ride because there's a lot on the horizon. Okay, there's a lot on the horizon. And it's really important to ground yourself and give yourself some ease, soothe that nervous system. I've got a guided meditation for patrons in the Patreon. If you're new and you're listening, make sure you listen to that. You can listen to it before you go to sleep. It's designed just to soothe you and give you a tool to bring yourself down from the edge. I know we're all feeling a whole lot more hopeful right now, or many of us are. And that hope will remain. Okay, so, but it's going to be a bumpy ride, and it's going to really take people getting organized and not forgetting state races, not forgetting your local races. Because good people running for office often don't win because people don't vote down ballot. They just vote for the presidential ticket. They don't vote down ballot. Vote down ballot. Do your homework. Research the candidates. You don't have to vote party ticket. And there's nonpartisan races. But you can find out which way people lean, So especially if you're in a more rural or small town, cities and big counties, with lots of population, might be a little harder to find out the dirt. But, you can still, Google is a thing. There's resources to look up candidates, and opensecrets.org is one of those for bigger things. And I'll have to see if I can find some resources to get to you guys for looking up things more at the local level. But TikTok, Instagram, a lot of the politicians are going to social media. You can look at their messages, and you can't believe every word everybody says, but you can get a sense of it. All right. It's time for some patron shout outs, and then we'll talk about August, and then we'll answer some patron questions. I'm going to have to break this up into a couple of pieces as far as patron shout outs, because again, 509 of you joined in 2.5 weeks. Of course, when I took time off. Yeah. But that's all right. We got this. You heard the music. It's time for patron shout-outs. Without you, there is no podcast. So, big shout-out to Sarah, Serena, Paradox Priestess, Kelly, Mama Shar, Connie, Sophia, Hannah, Hannah P., Amy, Kate, Rhonda, Christ, Catherine, Josephine, Kenneth, Rhonda, Lisa, Val, Sarah, Kate, Leah, Aaron, A. Hunter, Stephanie, Robin, Grace, Kelsey, Alicia, Taylor, Christopher, Alyssa, Allison, Natalie, Mama Des, Robin, Lexi, Lori, L. Likes, Tawny, Stirred Up Ranch, Andrea, Taylor, Christine, Kimberly, Abom, Paigey230, Retired, Kayleen, Anne, Lori or Sherry, I'm going to say 221, like garlic 221. Am I correct? Christina, Matea, Jennifer, Shanti, Anthony, Carrie or Kari, Chelsea, Joyce, Anna, Kathy, the Astral Gemini, Jody, Jacob, Mac, Ruby, Tina, Michaela, Kat, Katie, Hope, Amanda, Lori, Snow, Jessica, Wendy, Leah, Simara, LB, Rainbows and Sunshine Gal, Julie FM, Mina, Courtney, Lua, Karima, Rhonda, Lindsay, Rochelle, Vanessa, Marie, Elise, Taylor, Shay, Pablo, Nicole, Victoria, Brittany, baby, Jenny, Sabrina, Rachel, Augustus, Kay, Stephanie, Bianca, Shay, SL, Amanda, Shannon, Victor, Rachel, Jayla, Stephanie, Emily, Pamela, Chris, Kendall, Bridget, Amanda, Alyssa, Sol, Sarah, Dan, Shadia. If I pronounce that incorrectly, let me know. Ashley, Stacy, Emily, Jen, Enfantome, Niera, Nieria. Sorry, I like to pronounce people's names correctly. Elle, Valerie, Mimi, Michelle, Emily, Ellen, Christine, Tiffany, Ash, Rukia, Sunny, Sierra, Corey, Jennifer, Chin. I hope I said that correctly. Hillary, Paul, Lauren, Parrish, Brittany, Kev, Gail, Lavina. All right. Thank you, guys. All right. Let's talk about August. Oh my goodness. It is a crazy month coming up, guys. I'd love to tell you it was going to be different. And I'm working on the magazine. It'll be out by the 3rd. The hardest part is almost done. Those horoscopes, even though they're general, those ones take a little bit of time because I'm factoring in many different things for the rising signs. And if you don't know how to find your rising sign, it's actually there's a little page before the rising sign horoscopes with instructions on how to find that and how to find out what to read for, actually. So there's that. Let's take a look. What is up in August? Let me tell you. The cover's cool. Did you guys see that? Did you guys see the cover? The cover reveal happened. There we go. So let's go over the August astrology. August. August. We've got Venus square Uranus on the 2nd. August 4th is kind of a busy day. We've got the new moon in Leo. Venus moves into Virgo. And we've got Mercury retrograde. Okay. Now, Mercury retrograde does not happen until the end of the day. The end of the day. But when Mercury stations, it's actually when Mercury is stationing. That means it looks like it stops in the sky. Tends to be a bit of a day. Boy, it could be like stuff with farm equipment. I see heavy trucks in my head. Sometimes I get like little psychic flashes when I tune into the astrology. And so we'll have Mercury retrograde. And then the 13th, we have Mars conjunct Jupiter. The 15th, we have Mars square Saturn. That's probably going to be an interesting day. Mercury on a mundane level. On a personal level, you'd be really creative. Okay. And then we have Mercury square Uranus on the 18th. Mercury conjunct the Sun Cazimi. Okay. So it's still in Leo. Venus square Jupiter. I think we're looking at some very interesting financial situations globally. And this could be because of weather as we move like right out of the gate in August. I think we're going to see some big storms whip up. I've been talking about that for about a year, and I'm a little concerned about some seismic activity happening. I'm still really looking at those charts, but really from about the 13th in through October, I just think seismic activity is up. And when we look at moving towards that full moon, which happens on the 19th. Okay, the 19th of August, we have Venus opposite Saturn. The sun is square Uranus. The moon is full in Aquarius. And Jupiter is square Saturn. And these are really intense. So we kind of have this T-square with the full moon in Uranus. And if you are in the southern Oregon coastal area, I'm thinking around Gold Beach, Oregon. Okay. We could see an offshore quake, but I don't think it's like a 7 or an 8. I think it might be more like a 6, but it could rattle things. So I'm not sure it's so far offshore that you don't feel it. So if you're in the Gold Beach area, which is kind of remote, it's a small town. It's one of my favorite places to drive through on the Oregon coast. Yes, I have driven the entire Pacific coast more than once. But so I'm kind of looking at that. So southern Oregon coast, northern California coast, not down by San Francisco. It's more remote, but it could be in a lot of different places. It could be up in the Vancouver Island area. I think we'll see some stuff in the western coast of Mexico. And these could be storms too. These could be storms as well as seismic activity. August 22nd, we've got the sun moving into Virgo, and Venus will be squaring Mars. I think we'll see more economic issues. I really do. I think we'll be seeing some vehicular matters as well. Of course, it's very interesting. August, so the DNC picked the full moon for their convention. And now that we know that President Biden has stepped down as a candidate, I think we're going to see a passing of the torch into a new generation with this full moon in Aquarius. But I'm actually concerned in Chicago about violence. And I think we could be looking at, and the convention goes between August 19th and the 22nd. And we've got Venus square Mars that day, the Virgo Gemini square. I'm a little worried about vehicular violence. So if you're there, if there's crowds outside the convention, but it could be drones, it could be a bunch of different stuff. I also think we could see some more mishaps at the Olympics. That's really possible. There could be, again, more disruptions. Drones are a big thing in August. Drones, air accidents. I think I look at more like military equipment in that, like helicopters, planes. There might be some commercial air issues. But don't freak out if you're traveling. Like, pay attention. First of all, listen to your spidey senses. It's always nerve-wracking to travel. There's going to be, the nice thing about it is there's going to be some near misses, and we could see some real big rescues or divine intervention happen as well in August. So it's not all bad, okay? I'm just working through some of these really tough, mundane things. And then we've got Venus trine Uranus, and that's really interesting. We could see like some really cool new music, something very avant-garde, like something really interesting in the arts and music scene. We could see a drop or a release of something. There could be a new cool TikTok dance. There could be a new fashion item, all of that. August 28th, Mercury is direct, and Venus will oppose Neptune. We can see some stuff out at sea. And And then the month ends with Venus moving into Libra and it being trine Pluto. That could be a rise in the stock market. It could be some interesting. It's also a rise in women. So all those people predicting bad things for Kamala, I think you're going to see the rise of women politically and otherwise. So here's what I wrote in the Astro Vibes for that presentation. And again, you can listen to the whole thing and my thoughts from December of 2023. If you're a patron, you can go to the shop. August is highly chaotic. There's going to be accidents of a grand scale. Possible air traffic disruption or crashes. Could see massive windstorms or air quality issues. Issues with chemical plants and or nuclear facilities. Nuclear facilities with leaks, etc. My eye is on that power plant in Ukraine, but it could also be hearing about the use of depleted uranium in Ukraine, in Gaza, these dirty, dirty weapons. It's not a good time to launch anything new, be it a rocket or a project, until Mercury stations direct. It's really wild and everything will be topsy-turvy. And that's why I think we're going to see issues with missiles, satellites, even the International Space Station. So you don't want to start anything new, like brand new, but it's a good time to review your projects. People are going to be shouting the quiet part out loud. Like, you're going to see a lot of leaks, a lot of whistleblowing. There's going to be a lot of information is going to get dropped. A lot of these transits are very, very uncomfortable for Donald Trump, FYI. Kamala's under pressure. But Donnie's going to be dealing with some consequences. And it's not fun for J.D. Vance either, by the way. Labor disputes could turn violent. Manufacturing runs into issues either with faulty machinery, lack of parts, or safety protocols get breached. We could hear that in anything mechanical. We could see recalls on equipment and car parts, or Boeing could be in more trouble. We could see big upsets in political parties, especially at state levels. People are DONE, and that is global. We will see global uprisings. People are ready to fight against authoritarianism, whatever brand it's taking. So that's what's up in August. For a detailed look at what's in the headlines and your personal forecast, the Awake Space Astrology magazine is coming out. Here's what's going to be included in this month's magazine. Let me get that. Get it where I can read it. You're like, how did you do all those road trips when you can't read? Well, I'm myopic. I'm corrected so I can drive. It's a different set of skills. So we've got our full moon ceremonies to light your path. We've got new moon affirmations and journal prompts. We've got the astrology school. This month we're looking at oppositions. Big action, Mars-Jupiter conjunction. Predictions and horoscopes. The full moon in Aquarius, shake, rattle, and roll. How to access your guides. Astro vocab, the work, which is a monthly long essay on training your Mercury, cultivating free will. So understanding free will and how to cultivate it. Plus, we've got our astrology vocabulary. We've got interpretation guides, and my editor's notes. And as always, I will read the articles for patrons, so you get a little extra bonus. There's that. So, again, I did that presentation in December. I did the first one in June, and that was the follow-up in December. Just like I'll do my follow-up this December. And, wowza. It's been something else. It's been crazy to kind of watch it all unfold. I said for a long time I wasn't convinced Biden was the candidate, but he did have better transits than Trump. Yeah, overall, they weren't great, but they were better. And of all the people I was looking at, Kamala had the better transits. She had the better astrology. And so here we are. I'm not sure about VP pick. I don't have times for everybody. And one of the picks, I think it was Pritzker, he didn't have good astrology. So there was one of them right out of the gate. I was like, probably not him. So without birth times, I'm not going to, I didn't see anything horrible with Shapiro as far as transits went. But I didn't see anything great either, because I don't have a birth time. So without a birth time, I can't give an accurate prediction, and I'm not going to. So there's that. I think that's part of the big reveal at the convention. I mean, maybe they said they're going to have something picked by the 7th, but we'll see. We may not hear about it. I think there's going to be a lot of logistical issues at the convention, especially since it's starting on a full moon. I think you can expect some domestic terrorism in Chicago, and hopefully they've got really good security. One could hope. And again, it could be vehicular violence into a crowd. So if you're in the area, just be cautious. Okay. On a positive note, what's the good stuff we can look forward to in August? Well, I will be talking about that next week. I'll be talking about the Jupiter-Mars conjunction next week and how you can make the most of it, because that's really some great energy. I know a lot of people have been like, it's not good in Gemini. And I'm like, well, okay. Jupiter isn't necessarily good. It's a magnifier. And so with the Mars conjunct, you've got the planet of action conjunct the planet of magnification. So it's bold actions. And we're going to see big words. I think we're going to see big information. I think we're going to see fast cars. I think we're going to see bold moves, quick moves, adaptability as well. And I think we're going to see big wins, but use your intuition, pay attention to your own gut feelings. If you feel uneasy about something, don't let anybody talk you out of that. If you're like, hey, I don't think this is a good idea, and everybody around you goes, oh, you're just oversensitive or blah, blah, blah. Screw them. Okay. Their opinion is not more valid than your intuition. Okay. So, I'm not saying live in anxiety. Okay. But that's the other thing. Our nervous systems are really overstimulated right now. Really overstimulated. So you want to do things to try to bring it down. This is a great time to do some focused meditations. Don't try to get to no mind if you've got too busy of a brain. Don't do that. But do something like take a walk, crochet, knit, do some yoga, do some stretching. You don't have to spend a lot of money on these activities. There is a lot of YouTube out there. Okay. And if you're a patron, I have meditations. I read articles. I do these things to help soothe you, because being wound up right now isn't going to help. So there's that. All right. So that's August in a nutshell. If you want to know more details, I'll be giving them to you throughout the month, but they're also in the patron only podcasts, Q&As, the articles. I read the articles, the magazine. There's so much there, the Q&As, which I love. So, speaking of loving patrons, I think it's time for some more shout outs. All right, here's our patron shout out, part 2. Jessica, Carlos, Christine, Lady, Marcy Lynn, Hudson, Shannon, Zion, Adrian, Nikki, Nicole, Megan, Zandra, Amy, Betty, Pelu, Caitlin, Jojo, Derek, Ali, Charame, Tay, Victoria, Lisa, Tammy, Tori, Amanda, Dana, Mariah, Rebecca, Andrea, Stephanie, Beth, Aaron, YS, Patricia, Elon, Lee, Winter, Shelma, Sarah, Kimberly, Nabila, Dahlia, Candace, Serena, Roz, Milagros, Cameron, Rhonda, Cassie, Stephanie, Jess, Caitlin, Maggie, Chase, Carol, Patricia, Sophia, Taylor, Sparkle Worm, oh, I love that, Meg, Stephanie, Deborah, Courtney, Wesley, Lonnie, Taylor, Marie, Emily, Kelly, Emily, Sarah, M. Knight, Mallory, Carrie, Rebecca, Sanji, Brandel, Courtney, Ashley, Paige, Kelly, DeBismus, Robin, Barbara, Courtney, Alexandra, Stephanie, Sabrina, Appy, Paula, Yari, Darlene, Haley, Steph, Mavi, Sydney, Jackie, Just Us Three, Stephanie, Caitlin, Samantha, Stephanie, Trinity, Grace Ann, Melanie, Stacy, Angie, Amanda, Maurice, Danielle, Jennifer, Robin, Renee, Tracy, B, A.H., Rachel, Barbara, Allie, Bianca, Mike, M. Hawk, Steph, Isabel, Kim, Emily, Carly-Ann, Carla, Molly, Deborah, Terry, Leah, Sabrina, Abigail, Andrew, R.R., Chris Silva, Suzanne, Dawn, Lauren, Alexo, Bailey, Amy Lee, Carrie, Dawn, Deanne, Jillian, B. Crestituto, Denise, Amy, Emmy, Isaac, Julie, Lauren, Naomi, Caitlin, Mew, Deanna, Leah, Redestworld, Samira, Taryn, Katie, Tyler, Angela, Seashells, Ghosting, Madison, Nix, Jane, Oren, Christine, Regina, Jessica, Cheryl, Sandy, Nat, Zion, Tiffany, Yvonne, M, L. Carter, LMB, Breck, Yuritsa, Claudia, Daniel, Sheba, Jay, Victor, Guli, John, Lauren, Hikaramer, Kate, Sharon, Fire Girl, Nana, Cynthia, Ostrid, Janet, Alex, Joshua, Tiffany M and Tiffany S, Taylor, Rose, Carla, Kathy, Katie, Sandy, Tamika, Maritza, Nayeli, Destiny, John, Hunter, Myra, Nicia, Serene, Tyler, Jonathan, Henrietta, Louis, Jessica, Kelly, Elena, Isabel, Dot, Emily, Nicole, Amy, Kathy, Christine, Darla, Aubrey, Nola Mel, Tia, Jennifer B, Neelin, Annie, Zach, Sherry, Jillian, Nina, M, Betty, Beatrice, Hillary, Ann, Tracy, Lost, Joanna, Katie, Fiona, Addie, Melody, Kristen, Justin, Rosie, Tina, Sarah, Brittany, Claire, Sarah, Jana, Courtney, Megan, Verena, Joanna, AC, M, Bridget, Meredith, Sarah, Avery, Sam, Lindsay, Mary, Pinky, Sarah, Elaine, Terry the Cook, Jen, Overseer Eugene Lewis, H. Baird, Nisi, Brandy, Sam, Laura, Ricky, Rebecca, Kathy, Serene, Jessica, Jill, Kara, Jihan, Hope, Russell, Aaron, Jean, Jess, Jenny, Connie, Matthew, Aaron, Reagan, Jennifer, Jason, DB, Emmy, Ashley, Alexia, Tracy, Trevor, Christine, Seth, Philip, Aaron, Chloe, Alexis, Allie, Kat, Stacy, Justin, Randy, John, M, Bobby, Shanisha, Susie, Melissa, Wolf Boy, Christine, Sayantika, James, Jay, Julie, Angela, Justin, Kristen, Michelle, Robin, Sue, Alder, Stephen, Kanan, Brittany, Beth, Judith, Christina, Gronky, Maya, Jen, Joey, Myrna, Lucy, Nellie, Kelsey, Lainey, I Love Teaspoon, Michelle, Katie, Tiara, Dorothy, or Dorothea, Katrina, and Eva. Holy heck! That was a lot! Welcome. Okay. You know Mercury's in its pre-retrograde phase. No, there is no pre-shadow. There is no pre-shadow. That is a made-up internet thing. It is a pre-retrograde phase. And so what did I forget to tell you about in the introduction? Your Mercury Retrograde Survival Guide. Ha ha ha. All right, let's talk about Mercury retrograde and what it's going to look like, because it's going to be all of August. And it starts its retrograde motion in Virgo. So it's going to act a little bit more like Gemini. I think we're going to see just massive amounts of wind with this. Big winds. I think we'll see some pretty big transportation problems. This is global. So I think this is going to be in France or Germany, Austria, Italy, Eastern Europe as well. We could see trains. We could see farm equipment have issues. We could see accidents. We could also see issues with drones. I'm still nervous about the Olympics. You know, I should have last year when I was doing my year ahead predictions looked at the dates for the Olympics. I didn't really, because I don't do sports. Sports is not anything I look at. But given the instability in the world, my concern is we're going to have echoes of 1972, which was tragic. You can look it up. I don't want to talk about it. So there could be echoes from that. We could see issues on the Polish-Russian border. We could see issues with the Ukrainian border and Russia, of course, with the conflict going on. Belarus. Hungary may get up to stuff. Hey, I know we're in the charts in Hungary, and I think that's cool. But then half of me is like, how many of these are intelligence agencies? They're like taking notes, like, okay, so we know what's coming up. I charge, guys. So I want you guys to be careful driving on the 5th. Okay, because, 4th and 5th, it's a weekend. It's a weekend. Le weekend, mon ami. So be careful driving. Watch out for freeways. There could be storm systems really brewing. And that's everywhere in the world, guys. You know, so just be really ready for some big storms to kick up. I think the minute that, dust cloud from the Sahara that's over the Atlantic clears out, all bets are off. I think we just see hurricane after hurricane start forming, or big tropical storms. Earthquakes with this retrograde. Mercury will be in Leo. Most of the retrograde. So it's, and it's going to be squaring off with Uranus. So I think we could see, again, satellite communication disruptions, more hacking. And if not hacking, kind of like that, what was it? CrowdStrike or whatever it was called, where it was bad code. I think we could see issues with that. I think we could see exploitations of software, malware, etc. And so how do you deal with all of this? Well, first of all, don't run with scissors. Okay. That would be silly. And don't stick fight either. This is not the energy for it. What I would do is I would take a look at what's going on in your world, work-wise, project-wise. Like I'm reworking how I do things in my business, because I've grown a lot, which great problem to have. But I can't keep doing things the way I'm doing it and continue to grow and continue to serve people. And so I have to adjust things. Okay. So I'm going to be using Mercury retrograde, not to launch anything, but to prepare things, get my ducks in a row, work on recording things, and not to put out in the world just yet, but got a couple of podcasts I'm working on, and those have already been in the planning stages. So it'll be time to work on production. Yes, but not launching. We'll set launch dates for after Mercury is direct. I know you guys have been waiting forever for those. Some of you are so loyal. I don't know why, but thank you. So that kind of thing. If you're working on a project, it's time to go back over the details. If things haven't been going the way you wanted them, it's a really good time to, instead of trying to push forward, just take a step back from it for a minute and just kind of give it a critical eye, not like tear it apart, but just be like, okay, what part of this is working? Let's put that to the side. How can I adjust this? What can I do differently? If you're trying to get somewhere, I know we all work really hard and vacay is important to us, but the amount of people who act like their entire life is ruined if something bad happens on their birthday or their vacation is delayed, or instead of taking it in stride, and making lemons out of lemonade. I understand there are important things, and some things are urgent, and I know when we work really hard and we're burned out, we want to enjoy ourselves. I'm going to say be careful driving to destinations. I think earthquake-wise, we might see some stuff on the new Madrid fault between August and September. I don't think they'll be huge. I don't think we're looking at a 7 or an 8, but I think you might see some 4s and upper 5s, which will be plenty of rattle for the Midwest. I think all seismic zones are up. Okay. But I'm going to tell you, until it gets to a 6, I'm not worried about it. At 6 and up does major damage. 4 to 5.5, if there's building codes of a decent nature, you're fine. In developing nations, then you're looking at 4.5s and 5.5s to be more damaging. Mexico, be aware. I know I've got listeners in Mexico. Be aware, August, September. Just have your emergency supplies if you can. Have your documents put together. Because I'd be ready to, to deal with some shaking going on. I think mid-August, I think we're looking at up to 6.5. Potentially on the west coast of Mexico, potentially up near Japan, maybe in China, potentially Gold Beach, Oregon. And it's going to mess with roadways or bridges. So that's got me concerned. There will be transportation disruption. Okay. So there's that. So be cautious, listen to your instinct. Don't be freaked out. Okay. It's not a freak out. It's be as prepared as possible and make the most out of this. I love Mercury retrogrades. It's a great time to go back over things, refine things. Maybe you did write a manuscript, get it edited. Okay. Get it edited. So, work with an editor. Everybody's afraid of losing creative control when an editor is really going to make you better. I love my editor. Big shout out to my editor who makes my magazine very nice. So, and helps helps keep everything straight. And make sure there's grammar, because I write stream of consciousness. So if you write as much as I do, if you create as much as I do, you let go of perfection. And that's something to do with this Mercury retrograde. Let go of perfection. Look at what is meeting your objective. That's what matters. Perfection, let it go. People want authenticity anyway. The people who just really want the celebrity, that was something that really bothered me about the Olympic commentary, because I'm staying at my folks' house. And my dad watches this stuff, right? So I was watching it with him, a little bonding. And they kept pointing out, this celebrity, that celebrity, this celebrity. And I'm like, how about you talk about the athletes who worked their asses off to get there, instead of the people who paid whatever to be there? To me, it was a distraction away from the people who, dedicated a lot of time, a lot of years, sacrificed a lot to be that singularly focused, to be good at something, and you're going to talk about Tom Cruise, really, who's being so generous, letting everybody take their pictures with him. I'm like, I'm sure. Pay attention to the people who are there, just the whole, that is on its way out. Because I can imagine, like, I'm a Gen Xer, and I'm like, what the fuck was that? I can't imagine a Gen Zer watching it and be like, why would you be into that? Watch the athlete, We feel each other. Yeah. So, Mercury retrograde is not inherently bad luck. It doesn't mean it's horrible. I don't even foresee all those problems just because of the retrograde. There's other stuff going on that emphasizes that. And I think we've just had people trying to rush and force things. You have to remember that people that are in charge of stuff have really kind of pushed for normal when no one's recovered from lockdowns, and we still have, guess what? COVID and other diseases flying around. So, but they want us to be normal because of profits, which is a little crazy. So there's that. Don't force it. Don't force it. Just listen to yourself. Take it as easy as you can. There's going to be weird shit in August. Okay. That's all I can say. All right. Let's answer some, a couple patron questions, and we'll wrap it up. Ooh, so many questions. I just opened it up. I'm excited. Okay. So for patrons, I'll talk a little bit about, in your patron only podcast this week, I'm going to talk about the Mercury retrograde through the houses. And that's what's up on deck for that. And maybe I'll give you a little more preview of the DNC. So Riley, I've been thinking about this since I last had a reading with you, when I mentioned that I feel really old for being 21. And you responded that we typically feel old in our 20s. Then I realized 21 is part of the 7-year cycles that I've heard talked about a bit, but I was wondering if you could explain that a little bit more. Thank you. You are amazing. Riley, thank you for that. So let's talk about those 7-year cycles. That's the Saturn cycle. Okay, so we always hear about the Saturn return, but that Saturn return is part of a cycle. So when you're born, your Saturn placement is there, and at 7, you have your first square. That's a major time in your life, and that's where you start to make some decisions about who you want to be. Some people remember this, not everybody does. Okay, I remember when I was about 7, I was at my auntie's house for Christmas, and there was a lot of extended family. Like I'm a weirdo that grew up with a lot of extended family. Like, I knew my 5th cousins type thing. I was related to half the area I grew up in. And so I remember listening to all of the adults talking, and they got into the I could have done, I could have been, I should have done. And there was just so much regret in their voices. And I remember I was like 7, 8 years old, right around that first Saturn square. And I was like, when I grow up, I don't ever want to say I could have and didn't. I'd rather say, hey, I tried it and it didn't work out. But they were all talking about like they had a chance to leave the area or adventure or be a somebody, and they didn't do it because they were scared. That was effectively, and I made a big decision at that age. I didn't know it was a big decision at 7, right? So that's that first Saturn square. We make the big decision. And then the opposition happens when we're around 14, 15. And go back to 14, 15. We're looking at the world and we're like, this world is screwed up. Grown-ups suck. I feel restricted. I'm wanting to do these things, but nobody says I'm old enough. And they're all saying I'm too old for these things. And you start making more decisions about who you want to be and how you're going to be, right? And then 21 is the second square. And it's the last square in the Saturn cycle before you have the Saturn return. And so it's another big decision moment. And at 21, you're starting to see reality in a different way. And you're having to often deal with reality in a different way. And you're making decisions about yourself. And the world can feel pretty freaking heavy at 21. You know, you might have severe consequences show up in your life at 21. You might, I don't know about you. I lost some friends at 21 because of just maybe they partied a lot, or they had accidents. And you're starting to decide what is this world what how you're showing up in the world. It's not, is this world? Sometimes we think that way, but it's really, is your social cultural programming worth hanging on to? Do you really want to adopt what's going on in the world? Are you still trying to make people proud of you? And are you afraid to live your life? And it's grueling. It's kind of a disillusioning point. I've never forgotten it. I don't think you ever feel older than between 21 and say 29. I think those years, so basically the last Saturn square, as you run up into the Saturn return, they feel heavy. They feel heavy. You realize that not everything you were told is true. And even if you follow all the rules, you don't necessarily get the rewards of society and culture, and that they maybe weren't accurate. You might have been an overachiever and always won, and then all of a sudden you're not getting traction. Or you could be somebody who you want to follow your dreams, but you're a little nervous, and the rest of the world is telling you, have a real job, kid. Don't follow your dreams. That's bullshit. You'll never get anywhere. And as you know, Riley, as a member of the mystery school, that's not necessarily true. There's a whole process to help you get really, really clear about who you want to be and how you want to be in the world, and give yourself realistic frameworks, like proper realism, pragmatism. So that's really why we tend to feel heavy, is it's that we're making decisions about who we want to become, and we don't have perspective yet. You haven't quite got to the this too shall pass thing. You're more like, why does suckage still keep happening? and the older you get, if you notice, like a lot of old people, and I mean like elderly people, older than me, even though I can now get the senior special on the menu, tend to be a lot more relaxed about things. They've lived through a lot. They've seen people come and go. They know this too shall pass. They know everybody has an expiration date. They know that you only grieve as deep as you love. And they learn to treasure that love and that pain even. Because pain at least lets you know you're alive. They know that you can keel over at any minute. You might as well enjoy the ride, right? So, but it's hard to know that when you're young, and you get that wisdom by living through it. And so you're really, I like to say, from a non-astrological point of view, the 20s are kind of like practice adulthood. You're learning how to be a full-fledged adult. Yes, you legally are, but you're also, you're learning, you're gaining experiences, you're learning through experience. And now we know the brain isn't finished developing until 25 to 27 years old. It doesn't mean you're not an adult, but it just means you're not done developing. And so development and growth can be painful. So I hope that helped answer your question, Riley. Let me know. And you can always ask a follow-up. These are the type of questions that I answer in the patron-only Q&A. Let's see if I can find another one. So Jessica said, I just read about how a panel at the United Astrology Conference unanimously predicted Hillary would win in 2016. They talked a lot about comparing her and Trump's chart to Sibley, but less about transits. My question is, what all goes into predicting something like a presidential win when you do it? Okay, so I will not lie. I made fun of the UAC people and argued with them in Facebook groups and people who defended their predictions, because that was the dumbest way to predict anything I've ever seen in my life. So first of all, Sibley chart is not the chart of the United States. It is the chart of the revolution. 1776, we did not become a country. This is the problem, is they're not trained in political science or government or civics. They may have taken a few classes in high school, maybe a class or two in college, but they're not actual political analysts or political scientists. I'm a political analyst. And so, I use the Constitution chart. So we take our oath to the Constitution. If you work for the government, like everyone sworn in is swearing an oath to the Constitution. We give an oath to the Constitution. So, and let me tell you, the people who created these things, giving oaths, creating the Constitution, they were very aware of energy work. And so, and no, we're not talking about the evil secret societies. So the Sibley chart was the wrong chart to use if you were going to compare it. When I predict, I look at the individuals. I look at the election day chart, by the way, and I look at politically what flavor is up on deck. And I predicted Trump would win in 2016. I took a lot of heat for that. Oh my God, the names. Don't think that it's just megas who are mean. I took it from the left. And I was like, I didn't say I like the guy. I think the UAC did not step back from their bias. I do not think they stepped back from their bias. I looked at the comparative transits between the two people's natal and progress charts. And the election chart itself, the event chart itself, was very, very clear a populist would win. Bernie got knocked out. There were only two populists in the race, or supposed populists, people who might appear populist. And the other one was Donald. And so, called it. So, yeah, I think the problem is like, when I was coming up as an astrologer and just learning, mundane astrology was out of favor. And I don't think people are very well trained in it in the United States. I had an Australian teacher, who I've never met physically, but I had an Australian teacher, and he made me learn mundane astrology alongside natal astrology. And then I had some older mentors, who were like really old and had known like Dane Rudger and people like that. And they encouraged me to learn mundane astrology as well, because they said it'd make me a better natal astrologer. And I believe it has, because when I look at, especially in the United States, in the astrology community, when they just say, oh, 1776 is the nation's chart. No, that chart only gained prominence in the 50s because of American propaganda. So 1776 is not the birth of the nation. It was the conception in a lot of ways, but it wasn't the birth. And so there's no way they could have been accurate with that. So there's that. That was a great question. Thank you, Jessica. But yeah, the AFA also failed a scientific experiment because they don't focus on interpretation. They focus on calculations, which is great. You should know your calculations. Don't get me wrong. You should be exceptionally accurate. But I think we need to give as much attention to interpretation and how we communicate the chart and understanding conscious expression as we do accuracy of calculations. Okay, I've got a bunch for the Q&A. This is exciting. Look at you guys. Oh, here we go. Awake Astrology. You put my name on it. Somebody, I think, is teasing me. What is the Lionsgate portal in terms of astrology? There is no term of it. And what impact does it have on world events? Oh, somebody, do you know me so well? The Lionsgate has nothing to do with astrology. It is not an ancient anything. Our calendars have changed a lot. Every society, every culture has had a different kind of calendar. It isn't people pulling the wool over anybody's eyes. Nobody's trying to screw things up for anybody. Lionsgate is a modern new age invention. And let's put it this way. Let's say it has a thought form and the thought form is relatively positive and people feel good on that day. Fabulous. Has nothing to do with astrology. The claims have been numerologically, but I can guarantee you I have numerologer friends who just hate this as much as I do. It has no basis in astrology. None. And the claims that they used in the ancient Egypt are ridiculous because August wasn't even August back then. Okay. It just wasn't. It wasn't even considered the 8th month. They counted time different. An hour could be as little as 20 minutes and as long as 90 minutes back then. Okay. So we keep time very differently. It doesn't mean that was right and ours is wrong. It is relevant to our society and our technology, period. Okay, so it has nothing to do with anything. Now, that time of year tends to be a little spicy because we're in Leo season. But yeah, Lionsgate has nothing to do with the actual astrology. Nothing. So whoever you are, you did. Oh, it was Brendan. Hi, Brendan. Name to read on the podcast. So thank you. You were cracking me up. I was like, have you heard me rant about this before? And if you haven't, that's how I feel about it. And this was the perfect podcast to have that question on. I'm sure I'll have people disagree with me, but study astrology. So many good questions. Ooh, I'm going to really enjoy doing the podcast. Sorry, not the podcast, but the Q&A recording, because we have a Q&A library. Before you ask me questions, if you're a patron, make sure you go to the collections in the Q&A, and you'll see Q&A library. Go listen to those. But yeah. Alrighty. I'm going to leave the rest of these to the patron only content. Remember, I'm going to go over how to deal with Mercury retrograde depending on how it's falling in your chart, and I'm going to do a Q&A library recording. Yay! All right, guys, I'm going to love you and leave you because I got a magazine to finish, so it gets out to you by the 3rd. And as always, I appreciate all of you, whether you support us with your listens, your vibes, if you're a free patron, if you're a supporting member. Without you, there is no me. I hope you have a wonderful week. And remember, regardless of what goes on in the outside world on a personal level, you can have an amazing day. I'm Laurie Rivers. Thank you for listening to the Awake Space Astrology Podcast.